Hello guys, Dan here, welcome back to my channel. In today's short video I will try to paint this model for Ariadna army for the Infinity. It's a second Irregular Cameronian Regiment model, some dog warrior. I will show you how to paint the kilt and the fur in this video, so sit back, relax and enjoy it. I primed the model with the Bonewhite from Vallejo. If you don't have this color, you can use a Red Bone from GW. It's a very similar color. And then I will apply first Ork Flesh Contrast color. This will be applied on his shirt only. And I will take it straight from the pot and just apply it in a one thick coat. And then after that I will paint the kilt. I will use the Crit Camo. This color is as well a contrast and straight from the pot, not mixing with anything else. Just apply one thick coat all around the beanie. We will continue using contrast paints, so next one will be Ultramarines Blue, and I will use this color to block his armor panels, so the one on his gauntlets and shoulder pads. So same as before, one thick coat, and try to be as neat as possible, not to go on his skin parts, because that will be the next part we will paint. For the skin we will use Guilliman Flash Contrast paint, same as before, one thick coat, and try to have a control with your brush and not to go all over the place, and as well clear out all the pooling if you see it on some spots, so just dry up the brush and then scoop all the extra paint that you have on the model. For his guns I use the Black Templar Contrast paint, as well one very thick coat, and just apply it in a single motion. Just try to avoid getting over the same spots that you apply the contrast paint again, because it will create stains. For the leather belts I didn't want to use the contrast paint because I was afraid I wouldn't have enough control and the paint will spill around, so I will use it with traditional method. I will use the Rhinox Hide and just block all the leather straps with it, and then after that we will wash them with traditional method. For the wash you can use Nuln oil, or in my case I use the dark tone with some quick wash shading medium, because I really love the army painter washes, they're really great. So just go all around the leather belts that we just painted and apply one small wash. It's time now to start working on the kilt. So we will use first Warboss Green. I will put this color on my wet palette and add a few drops of water to it so it flows good, and then I will go all around the kilt and just reinforce the color. I will just leave the shades intact. I just need to note that this color is really transparent, so you will have to do this in a couple of very thin coats until you get an even coat all around. Just leave all the recesses dark. And then we will use a Skarsnik Green, and we will use this color to highlight all the folds that he have on his kilt. So every single fold just draw a little line, and as well on the bottom and top edges of the kilt. It should look something like this when it's done. Okay, we will start now drawing the lines. So I will use the Caledor Sky for this, so I will draw vertical lines all around the kilt, and I want these lines to be a little thicker because later you will have to draw another line in the middle. So use the whole width of your brush and just draw vertical lines. Just leave a good space between them. They don't need to be too close to each other. And I applied this in 2 thin coats. Now I will do the same thing with the Castellan Green, but this time I will draw horizontal lines. So just leave enough space between those lines. You don't want them to be too close to each other, and you want them to be thicker as well, because we will draw another line in the middle of this. So take your time and just block all Kilt with these horizontal lines. This is how I did it, so you can pause here and copy the lines if you like to do the same thing. Okay, now I will use Yriel Yellow, and I will use my smallest brush that I have, and I will draw a very thin line in the middle of this both horizontal and vertical stripes. So just go slowly, go around and draw those thin lines. And when you are done with the lines, you just go back and every spot that the lines cross each other, just reinforce those crosses. This will create a highlight. So this is how it looks at the end. I think this process can be quite lengthy. I think it took me like a half an hour or maybe a little more just to do all of this. So just be patient with it. And now I will paint his shirt. So I will use Moot Green, and I will use this color just to reinforce the previous color, but I will still leave all the shades intact and all the recesses with the previous color from the contrast paint. Highlight for this shirt will be very easy, so I will mix Moot Green with the Yriel Yellow, like a 50-50 mix, and just highlight the folds on the shirt and only the most raised areas and the edges. Now it's time to move to the armor panels. My first color will be a Caledor Sky. I will use this color to try to cover only upper half of the armor panels, both on the gauntlets and on his elbows. So just top 50% of the armor. I put this color on your wet palette and add a few drops of water so it flows good from your brush. And do this in 2 or 3 very thin coats, so you have a nice transition between the darkest to the lightest part of the gauntlets. After previous layer of paint is dried, I will use a Teclis Blue, and I will do the similar thing. So I will put it on a wet palette, add a few drops of water, but this time I will cover only the top 1/3 of the gauntlets and on these armors on his elbows. And as well, if you do his shoulder pads, you will just apply this on the most raised areas at the top of the shoulder blades. This is how I did it, so you can see that on the top it's very bright and it's quite dark at the bottom, so you have a really nice transition. And now I will highlight everything with the Fenerisian Grey. So this will be applied only as an edge highlight. So every single edge of these armors and as well those two bolts that he have on the gauntlets. So just a very thin highlight. And now to draw the cross on the shoulder, I will use a Celestra Grey and just draw a cross. So just take a deep breath and then draw a straight line. At first I always sketch it like a little thinner, and then I just go back a couple of times and reinforce the color to get its full potential. And then I will use the Ulthuan Grey and highlight it. So just go all over the same lines, but just make these lines little narrower. So on the sides you will have like a fake highlight. For all the letter beds, I will use the Skrag Brown, and I will just go around and with the top of my brush just a stipple and draw a little lines and tears just to create like a little scratches on the letter. For the guns we will use Administratum Grey. So this is pretty straightforward. So take the side of your brush and do all the edges with the highlights, and as well so every single line on the gun you want to draw a bright line with this color. Now we will highlight the skin. The thing is, on the art he have a much brighter skin than my contrast color, so I decided to go brighter. So first I will use the Kislev Flesh, and then I will go and cover around 90% of the previous color. I will just leave all the shades intact, but every single muscle, all the raised areas I will cover with this color. And this color is transparent, so this have to be done in 2 or 3 very thin coats. Now for the second highlight I will use the Flayed One Flesh, and I will apply this, let's say I will cover like around 50% of the upper parts of the muscles, so the parts of the muscles that are more exposed to the light. As well, this color is very transparent, so do 2 or 3 very thin coats of it. And the final highlight for the skin, I will use Palyd Flesh. And with this color I will highlight like only fingers, knuckles, the veins on the muscles, as well the whole face, like ears, nose, cheeks, and on the most raised areas of the muscles I will just draw little lines just to bring some definitions to the muscles. I will show you a good trick how to paint a fur. So we won't do the traditional method of the paint and wash, because this is not how the fur looks like actually. So I will use Rhinox Hide, and I will paint 1/3 of the part of the fur that I wanna paint. So you will go each section separately, and then after that is dry, I will use the Moorfang Brown and paint the 2/3 of the fur. But this time I will try to mix these two colors in between when they are matching. So I will just add a drop of water and I will just blend them together, so to create a transition between the darker part of the fur and the mid-tone. For the final section of the fur, so all your most raised part of the furs or the end of the hair, you will use the Skrag Brown, and you will use the same technique. So apply it, and then when the color touches the previous color, just blend them together while they are still wet to create a transition. And this is how the model looks like after I did all the fur parts. So you can see even on his head, the top of the head is darker, but while the hair goes down, it's brighter. Highlight the fur. I will mix a Skrag Brown with the Screaming Skull. This will be 70-30 mix, so very little of Screaming Skull to the mix. And you can use the side of your brush or just dry brush this over the fur just to create a highlight. For this little accessory that he have on his crouch, I will use Gorthor Brown just to block it, and then later we will shade it when we do the rest of the parts. For the metal parts, like these two grenades and this symbol, I will use Lead Belcher. So just one thin coat will be enough to cover it. So to shade both this accessory and the grenades, I used dark tone. If you don't have it, you can still use Nuln oil. The effect will be totally same. And while we are there with the shade, I will shade the teeth as well, because I forgot to do it in the previous steps. For this badge, I used the Screaming Bell, but I think you can use any color to your preference, or even draw the Ariadna symbol there if you want, because it's quite big and gives you opportunity to do that. Now it's time to finish his shirt, so I will use Evil Sun Scarlet to paint the details like the buttons and this little thing that he have in the middle, and as well I will use this color to paint all the leather straps that he have on the leg, and there is a couple of on his hair at the back, and as well on the hilt of the axe. And then I will shade all the red parts with Drucci Violet. And as well I shaded this badge as well with this color. To shade all the metal parts, I will use a Stormhost Silver. So this is pretty straightforward and very little highlight. So on those two grenades, this accessory that he have on the middle of the kilt, and this little badge. For his teeth, I will use a Screaming Skull and just highlight every single teeth with one little line. Just be careful here because they are so small, so you don't go inside. If you do, then you have to wash again and do it again. And then one of the last things that we need to do is to highlight the red. We will use a Trost Layer Orange, and we will just highlight the edges with this color. So this color is transparent as well, so you will have to do it like 2 or 3 times. Now I will show you the trick how to do the eyes nicely. So we will just take a white scar or any white color that you have, and you will just fill the eye sockets with this color. So just try to be as neat as possible, not to mess up the highlights on the face that we did, and just fill out the eye sockets. And after that color is dried, you will take a little of your wash and just wash it inside the eye sockets. You don't need to put a lot, just a little, so you have a nice shade. And to draw the pupil, I will use Evil Sun Scarlet and just make a little dot in the middle of the eye. It's pretty easy on this model because he have everything sculpted already. For his nails and the tip of his nose, I just used the black color and just painted them all black. And then after that I put one little highlight with the Screaming Skull. The last thing to be done is to paint the axe. Oh, this is pretty easy and straightforward. So I block the cutting edge of the axe with the lead belcher, and then I painted the middle part, the leather part, with the Rhinox Hide, just to match all the leather parts of the model. And for this cloth part I used the Evil Sun Scarlet, just one even coat all around. Actually, you don't need to paint all around, but I like. And then for the hilt I use the Wildwood contrast paint, so one thick layer. After everything is dried, I use the one wash of the dark tone or the Nuln oil and just highlight the cutting edge of the axe with the Stormhost Silver. And that's it. I transfer him to his base, and the model looks completed. So guys, I hope you liked this video. If you would like to know how I made the base, leave a comment below and I will make a video. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It will mean a lot to me. And until next video, stay safe and take care. Bye bye.